The stars above Earth had witnessed countless wars, but none had ever reached this quiet blue planet. That changed when the Draconian Empire decided humanity would make excellent slaves. Supreme Wardrake stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the display screens. Behind him stretched an armada of 847 warships, each one capable of destroying a city in seconds. He had conquered 94 worlds in his long career. This would be the easiest victory yet. The Draconians were reptilian creatures, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that could deflect most primitive weapons. Their empire controlled a third of the known galaxy. They took what they wanted, and right now they wanted Earth's 6 billion humans for labor and genetic experiments. Captain Wu sat in the Korean Space Force orbital station, her eyes fixed on the radar screen. The dots representing enemy ships filled her display like a swarm of angry insects. Her hands trembled slightly as she counted them. Nearly 1,000 ships. Earth had 12 patrol craft and some old satellites. It was not even close to a fair fight. "Ma'am, should we evacuate the station?" her junior officer asked, his voice cracking with fear. Wu shook her head. "No, we stay and observe. Command needs data on their movements." She did not mention that evacuation would not save them anyway. If the Draconians wanted them dead, nowhere on Earth would be safe. Far below on Earth's surface, Admiral gathered his staff in a bunker deep beneath Seoul. The old soldier had fought in 3 wars during his career, but never against aliens. The holographic display showed the Draconian fleet approaching Mars. "They will reach Earth orbit in 6 hours, reported Colonel Minho, his face pale. "Our weapons cannot even scratch their shields." Nodded slowly. He had already accepted that Earth's military was useless against this threat, but he had received strange orders from the government just an hour ago, orders that made no sense. "Activate Protocol Sanctuary," they had said. He did not know what it meant, but he followed orders. "Send the activation code," commanded. "Sir, I do not understand what we are activating," Minho replied. "Neither do I, Colonel, but do it anyway." Across the planet, Dr. Jin worked in her laboratory, studying alien artifacts that Earth had collected over the years. She was someone who studied alien life forms. Most of her work involved examining bacteria from meteorites. Today, she had been called to a government facility and shown something that changed everything she thought she knew. The room was cold and filled with strange machines. In the center stood a device that hurt to look at. It seemed to bend light around itself, creating colors that should not exist. Dr. Jin had asked what it was. The government officials had simply said, "Insurance." Now those same officials were activating it. She watched through protective glass as the machine began to hum. The sound was wrong, like music played backwards. Reality itself seemed to ripple around the device. "What does it do?" she asked the lead scientist, Dr. One. The physicist smiled grimly. "It reminds the universe of something it forgot, something about Earth's position in space-time." That explanation made no sense to Jin, but before she could ask more questions, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. In orbit, Wu watched her screens in confusion. The Draconian fleet had passed Mars and was now approaching Earth's moon. Then something impossible happened. The radar contacts began disappearing, not destroyed, not moving away, simply gone. "Sensor malfunction," her junior officer reported. "All tracking systems just went offline." "Impossible. These are independent systems. They cannot all fail at once," Wu said, but even as she spoke, backup systems came online showing the same thing. Empty space where an armada had been moments ago. She switched to visual cameras. Nothing. The Draconian fleet had vanished completely. On his flagship felt the universe twist around him. One moment he was preparing bombardment patterns for Earth cities. The next moment, reality was breaking apart. His ship shuddered violently. Emergency lights activated across the bridge. His crew screamed in confusion. "What is happening?" he roared at his navigator. The navigator stared at his instruments in horror. "Sir, space-time is collapsing around us. We are being pulled into. I do not know what it is. It should not exist." Tried to order a retreat, but his words were drowned out by a sound that made his blood freeze. It was like screaming, but not from any throat. It was the sound of space itself crying out in pain. Then darkness swallowed everything. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council received emergency transmissions. The Draconian Armada had disappeared. Counselor Arya, a diplomat from the species, immediately contacted Earth through primitive radio signals. "Earth government, this is Galactic Council. What happened to the Draconian fleet? Our sensors show they reached your orbit and then ceased to exist. Respond immediately." The reply came 12 minutes later, delayed by the slow speed of radio waves. "This is Earth Defense Command. We detected no Draconian vessels in our space. Perhaps their navigation systems malfunctioned." Arya's 3 eyes widened in disbelief. "Impossible. 847 warships do not simply get lost. What weapons did you use?" Another 12-minute delay. "We used no weapons. We are a peaceful species with limited defensive capabilities. If the Draconians are missing, we cannot help you find them." The message ended. Arya reviewed it 3 times, analyzing every word. Either Earth was lying or something impossible had occurred. An entire armada did not just vanish. The Draconians were the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Losing contact with one ship was rare. Losing all of them was unthinkable. Back on Earth, Admiral received reports from every tracking station. The same story from everyone. The Draconian fleet had simply ceased to exist at the exact moment Protocol Sanctuary activated. He called the government officials who had given him the orders. "What did we do?" he asked. The voice on the other end was calm, almost too calm. "We did nothing, Admiral. Earth's natural defenses activated automatically when hostile forces approached. The Draconians chose their own fate." Natural defenses. We are a planet. We do not have natural defenses against space fleets. "That is where you are wrong," the voice replied. "Earth has always had this protection. We just never needed it before, and we never told anyone about it because we hoped we would never need to use it." The line went dead, leaving with more questions than answers. In her orbital station, Wu compiled her report. She had sensor data showing the exact moment of disappearance. Temperature fluctuations, gravitational anomalies, brief distortions in space-time, all of it pointed to something impossible. The fleet had not been destroyed. It had gone somewhere else. But where? As she worked, she noticed something else on her sensors. Faint quantum signals coming from the area where the fleet had vanished. They were weak, almost impossible to detect, but they were there, and if she listened carefully through the static, they almost sounded like screaming. Dr. Jin stood in the government facility, staring at the strange machine that had activated. It had powered down now, but the air around it still felt wrong, like reality was thinner there. She had so many questions, but nobody would answer them. "Can I study this device?" she asked Dr. One. The physicist shook her head. "No, this facility will be sealed. What happened today is classified at the highest level. You saw nothing. You know nothing. Earth was lucky and the Draconians made a navigation error. That is the official story." "But that is not true," Jin protested. "No," One agreed. "But it is the story that keeps the galaxy from panicking. Because if they knew the truth about what protects Earth, they would be more afraid of us than they ever were of the Draconians." As Earth's sun set on that historic day, the planet appeared peaceful and unchanged. Cities continued their normal routines. People went about their lives, unaware that an invasion fleet had approached and vanished. The government kept the incident classified. But across the galaxy, rumors began to spread. The mighty Draconian Empire had lost an entire armada. Some species whispered about secret human weapons. Others suggested the Draconians had faked the incident to avoid an expensive war. Nobody knew the truth, and Earth intended to keep it that way, at least for now. The warning had been sent. Whether anyone would listen remained to be seen. The galaxy did not believe Earth's story. Within days, the disappearance of the Draconian Armada became the biggest news across thousands of worlds. Billions of beings watched the recordings, analyzed the data, and came to one conclusion: Earth was lying. 3 investigation fleets arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system within the first week. Each one carried scientists, military observers, and journalists from different species. They stopped near Jupiter and sent long-range scans toward Earth. What they saw confused them even more. Earth looked completely normal. Cities glowed with lights at night. Satellites orbited peacefully. The 12 patrol craft that made up Earth's laughable defense force flew their regular routes. There were no orbital weapons platforms, no massive defense shields, no sign of technology advanced enough to destroy a Draconian armada. "This makes no sense," said Investigation Commander an officer whose species prided themselves on logic. "Our scans show a civilization barely capable of reaching their own moon, yet they claim to have defeated the Draconians." His science officer, a floating jellyfish-like being from Aquarian Prime, pulsed with colored lights that translated to words. "Perhaps the Draconians are hiding somewhere in the system, some kind of elaborate trap." "For what purpose?" an asked. "The Draconians announced their invasion publicly. Retreating would bring them shame. They would never do this willingly." None of the 3 investigation fleets dared to venture closer to Earth. They had all received the same message from their governments: observe only. Do not approach the planet until we understand what happened. Nobody wanted to be the next fleet to disappear. On Earth, Lieutenant Bora worked in military intelligence, analyzing communications from the alien fleets. She was young for her rank, only 28, but her skill at code breaking had earned her a position in the most classified division of Earth's government. What she discovered made her blood run cold. Earth's government was lying to its own people. The official story said the Draconian fleet had been destroyed by experimental weapons, but the classified files Bora accessed told a different story. The fleet had not been destroyed. It had been taken somewhere, and Earth's government had no control over what took them. She brought her findings to her superior, Director Sung, a stern woman in her 50s who had worked in intelligence for 30 years. "Sir, the public story does not match the classified reports," Bora said, laying out the evidence on the secure terminal. Sung looked at the files without surprise. "I know, I helped write both versions." "But why lie? If we have a weapon powerful enough to stop the Draconians, the galaxy should know. It would prevent future invasions." "It is not a weapon, Lieutenant, and that is precisely why we must lie." Sung pulled up additional files that made Bora's clearance level flash warnings. "What protects Earth is not something we built or control. It is something we accidentally discovered, something that exists outside normal space, and if the galaxy knew about it, they would be terrified." Before Bora could ask more questions, alarms sounded throughout the building. Another alien fleet was approaching. Across the galaxy, social media networks exploded with content mocking Earth. Comedians from 100 worlds made jokes about the Great Draconian navigation failure. Memes spread showing tiny human ships chasing massive Draconian warships away. The most popular theory was that the Draconians had faked the entire incident to avoid paying the costs of a real invasion. "The Draconians are many things, but they are not cowards," one viral post claimed. "They obviously made a deal with Earth and are pretending to be missing, probably bought off with Earth's primitive resources." In the Draconian Empire's capital, War Matron watched these posts with growing rage. She was even more feared than had been. Her scales were darker, almost black, and her eyes glowed red with barely controlled fury. "They mock us," she hissed to her council. "They believe we ran away from primitives. This insult cannot stand." "But War Matron, we lost all contact with the First Armada," one advisor dared to say. "Perhaps we should investigate further before." Claws flashed out, and the advisor fell silent permanently. The other council members wisely said nothing. "I will lead the next fleet personally," announced, "and I will broadcast every moment to the galaxy. When Earth burns, everyone will see that the Draconian Empire does not negotiate with food." Earth's first official ambassador to the Galactic Council was a woman named Duh. She had been a diplomat on Earth, skilled at navigating difficult negotiations. Now she found herself representing humanity to thousands of alien species, most of whom thought her people were either liars or impossibly lucky. She stood before the Galactic Council, surrounded by representatives from the most powerful civilizations. Some were humanoid, others were so alien that they needed computer assistance just to understand their biology. All of them wanted answers. "Ambassador Duh," spoke Counselor Arya, whose species had 3 eyes and spoke through vibrating membranes. "Your government claims the Draconian fleet was lost due to navigation errors, yet our data shows they reached Earth orbit successfully before disappearing. Please explain this contradiction." Duh kept her face calm, though her heart pounded. She had been briefed on what to say, but the words still felt wrong in her mouth. "The Draconian fleet approached our world with hostile intent. They violated our sovereignty and the Galactic Council's own protection laws for developing civilizations. What happened to them is a consequence of their own actions." "That is not an answer," another counselor spoke, this one resembling a living crystal. "Did you destroy them? If so, with what weapons? Your species has no military technology capable of such destruction." "We did not destroy them," Duh replied carefully. "They simply are no longer in normal space." The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Not destroyed, but gone. What did that mean? Arya raised a limb for silence. "Ambassador, are you claiming some kind of dimensional technology? That is impossible for a species at your development level." "We claim nothing except the truth. The Draconians came to conquer us. They are gone, and we warned them this would happen." Duh pulled up a holographic display. "Before the First Armada arrived, we sent a message to the Draconian Empire. We told them not to approach our world with hostile intent. They ignored us. That was their choice." "And now you issue the same warning to us?" Arya asked. "Yes, do not approach Earth with weapons and bad intentions. That is all we ask." The council session ended with more questions than answers, but they had delivered her message. Whether anyone believed it was another matter. On Earth, Investigator Wu worked for a special operations division that most people did not know existed. His job was to find secrets, even secrets his own government kept. He had been tracking down information about Protocol Sanctuary, the mysterious activation that coincided with the Draconian disappearance. His investigation led him to a facility in the mountains, hidden beneath layers of false records and misdirection. Getting inside required skills he had learned over 20 years of covert work. What he found inside shocked him. The facility was not a weapons lab. It was a containment site. At its center stood a device that made his eyes hurt to look at directly, but what terrified him more were the warnings posted everywhere. "Do not approach with aggressive thoughts. Maintain peaceful mental state at all times. Hostile intent will trigger automatic response." Wu realized the terrible truth. Earth's defense was not something they could control. It was automatic, and it responded to intent, not actions. Anyone approaching Earth with plans to harm it would trigger something that pulled invaders out of normal space entirely. Before he could investigate further, alarms sounded. Security had detected him. He ran, barely escaping the facility, but he carried with him knowledge that changed everything. General Yang commanded Earth's most classified military operations. He was one of only 12 people who knew the complete truth about Earth's defense. He sat in a meeting with the global leadership, explaining the situation. "The Draconians are preparing a second armada," he reported. "Twice the size of the first. They will arrive in approximately 6 weeks, and they are broadcasting their approach on every channel. The entire galaxy will be watching." "Can we stop them?" asked the president of the Pacific Alliance. "No," Yang replied simply. "We cannot stop them from coming, but the same thing will happen to them that happened to the First Fleet. The Fold will take them." "The Fold, that is what you call it?" another leader asked. "Yes, it is a dimensional breach that exists around Earth. We did not create it. We discovered it accidentally during quantum experiments in 2157. We did not fully understand what it was until the first Draconian fleet triggered it. And this fold just takes anyone who approaches with hostile intent. Yes, it is automatic. We have no control over it." Yang pulled up classified sensor data. "But there is something else, something we have not told the Council. The fold is not empty. Our sensors detect signals from inside it, quantum frequencies that sound like screaming. The Draconians are alive in there, and they have been for months." The room fell silent. Finally, someone spoke. "Are you saying the first armada is trapped in another dimension, alive and suffering?" "That appears to be the case, and if the second fleet comes, they will join them." The leaders looked at each other with growing horror. They had thought Earth was protected. Now they realized Earth was more like a trap that caught invaders and held them in a place where normal physics did not apply, a place where something unknown waited in the dark. Across the galaxy, news broadcasts announced the Draconian Empire's response. War Matron appeared on every screen, her massive form intimidating even through video. "The primitive species on Earth has insulted the Draconian Empire for the last time," she declared. "In 6 weeks I will personally lead our fleet to their world. We will broadcast everything. The galaxy will watch as we reduce Earth to ash. There will be no tricks, no hiding, only fire and justice." The announcement was met with mixed reactions. Some species cheered, eager to see Earth punished for their perceived deception. Others worried that the Draconians were making a terrible mistake. And a few, the ones, remembered that the first armada had been just as confident. Ambassador De issued Earth's response through official channels. The message was simple and short. "You have been warned. Come in peace or do not come at all. The choice is yours, but the consequences are not." The galaxy waited. In 6 weeks, everyone would have their answer. The truth about Earth's mysterious defense would be revealed, one way or another. And the Draconian Empire would either reclaim their honor or prove that Earth's warning was very, very real. The Second Draconian Armada was a sight that made entire star systems tremble. War Matron had assembled 1,600 warships, each one bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. The fleet gathered in full view of the galaxy, a show of force meant to restore Draconian honor and terrify any who dared question their power. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds watched the live broadcasts. Every major news network carried the feed. Betting markets opened on hundreds of planets, with most wagers predicting Earth's destruction within hours of the fleet's arrival. Only a few brave souls bet on Earth's survival, and they were mocked as fools throwing away their money. Colonel Minho stood in Earth's Defense Command Center, watching the same broadcasts. His screens showed the massive Draconian fleet in perfect formation, moving through space like a school of predatory fish. Each ship was 3 times the size of Earth's largest space station. The numbers made his stomach turn. "They will reach Mars' orbit in 6 hours, he reported to Admiral. "After that, another 4 hours to Earth." Nodded slowly. The old Admiral looked tired, his face lined with stress. He had not slept well in weeks. "Have we prepared the evacuation shelters?" "Yes, sir. Though if the fold does not activate, the shelters will not save us. Their weapons can penetrate a mile of solid rock. I know, Colonel, but we must do something. We cannot just sit and wait. In orbit, Captain Wu checked her instruments for the 100th time that hour. Her small space station had been reinforced with everything Earth could spare, which was not much. She had 12 crew members, all volunteers who had refused evacuation orders. They wanted to witness what happened, to record data until the very end. Captain, I am detecting the same quantum fluctuations we recorded last time, her science officer reported. He was a young man named Dong, fresh from university and brilliant with sensor technology. The anomaly is already forming, even though the fleet is still near Jupiter. Wu studied the readings. He was right. The space around Earth was beginning to shimmer on quantum sensors, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Whatever the fold was, it was preparing itself. Record everything, she ordered. If we die today, at least the data might help someone understand what happens here. On the Draconian flagship, War Matron stood at the bridge, her red eyes fixed on the blue planet growing larger ahead. She did not underestimate Earth. She had studied every bit of data from the first Armada's disappearance. She had prepared for dimensional rifts, gravitational weapons, quantum bombs, and every other theoretical weapon a primitive species might have stumbled upon. Her fleet moved in a formation designed to resist dimensional attacks. Ships were spaced to avoid chain reactions. Energy shields were calibrated to deflect exotic particles. Every sensor was tuned to detect anomalies. If Earth tried the same trick, she would see it coming. War Matron, we are detecting unusual readings ahead, her science officer reported. Spacetime appears unstable around the planet. Recommend we slow our approach. No, growled. The First Fleet hesitated. They gave Earth time to activate whatever defense they used. We will not make that mistake. Increase speed. We strike fast and hard. The fleet accelerated, charging toward Earth like a thrown spear. The entire galaxy watched, holding their collective breath. In her laboratory, Dr. Jin monitored biological sensors that tracked the approaching Draconians. She was not supposed to be here. The facility had been locked down, all non-essential personnel evacuated. But she had clearance codes she was not supposed to have, thanks to investigator Wu, who had shared his discoveries with her before disappearing into protective custody. What she saw on her screens made her hands shake. The Draconian biosigns were strong, aggressive, radiating hostile intent that her sensors could somehow measure. And the fold was responding to that intent like an immune system, responding to an infection. Dr. One worked beside her, fingers flying over controls. The physicist's face was pale with fear, but her hands were steady. The dimensional breach is expanding faster than last time, she said. The fold is reacting to the larger threat. It is like it is alive, preparing to defend itself. Or preparing to feed, Jin whispered. One looked at her sharply. What do you mean? The energy readings from the first breach. I have been studying them for months. The pattern does not match any weapon or defensive system. It matches biological feeding behavior. The fold took the first Armada, but it did not just make them disappear. It consumed them. Before one could respond, proximity alarms shrieked throughout the facility. The Draconian fleet had crossed Mars' orbit. Across Earth, people looked up at the sky, though they could see nothing with their naked eyes. Those with telescopes watched as tiny points of light appeared overhead, growing larger by the second. Parents held their children close. Soldiers gripped their useless weapons. Religious leaders prayed to their various gods. Everyone waited to see if Earth's mysterious defense would activate again, or if this time the Draconians would break through and bring fire from the heavens. Commander In piloted his small patrol craft on the edge of Earth's orbital space. His ship was laughably small compared to the approaching Armada, like a mosquito facing a flock of eagles. He had 12 ships with him, the entirety of Earth's space-capable military force. They had been ordered to observe and retreat if the Draconians opened fire. "Sir, what are we supposed to do against that?" his wingman asked over the radio. In looked at his sensors showing the massive enemy fleet. "We bear witness. If Earth falls today, someone needs to record what happened. And if the fold activates, we need data on how it works. And if it does not activate?" In did not answer. There was no answer. If the fold failed, Earth would be destroyed within the hour, and his tiny patrol craft would be vaporized in the first seconds. The Draconian fleet reached the orbit of Earth's moon, smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. In minutes, they would be in firing range. Earth's pitiful defense force was not even trying to intercept them. Good. This would be easier than she thought. "All ships arm weapons," she commanded. "Target every major city. We will broadcast our victory across the—" Reality broke. That was the only way to describe it. One moment, space was normal. The next moment, it was as if the universe had been torn like paper. Felt it in her bones, a wrongness that made every instinct scream in terror. "Evasive action," she roared, but it was too late. The fold opened around her fleet like a massive mouth. It was not visible in normal space, but every sensor on every ship screamed warnings. Gravitational forces that should not exist pulled at the ships. Dimensional barriers that mathematics said were impossible began separating the fleet from normal reality. Grabbed her command chair as the ship lurched violently. Crew members fell, screaming. Alerts flashed across every screen. The ship's AI calculated their trajectory and showed results that made no sense. They were moving in directions that did not exist, toward a place that was not a place. "Emergency jump, get us out of here," she commanded. Her pilot frantically worked the controls. The faster-than-light drive engaged, pouring massive energy into creating an escape path. For a moment, it seemed to work. The ship began pulling away from the anomaly. Then the fold adjusted as if it was thinking and pulled harder. The last thing saw before darkness swallowed everything was Earth, blue and peaceful, hanging in space like it was mocking her. On Wu Station, every sensor went wild. The space where the Draconian fleet had been now showed readings that made no scientific sense. Temperature and pressure fluctuated between absolute zero and the heat of a star's core. Time itself seemed to be moving at different speeds in different areas. And through it all, her quantum sensors picked up signals that sounded distinctly like voices crying out in fear and pain. "Did you record everything?" she asked Dong. "Yes, Captain. Every sensor reading, every energy signature. But I do not understand what I am seeing. According to this data, the Draconian fleet is both here and not here. They are occupying a space that overlaps our reality but exists outside it." "The fold," Wu said quietly. "That is what the classified reports call it. A pocket dimension that Earth accidentally created, or possibly always existed around our planet. We just never knew it was there until we developed quantum sensors sensitive enough to detect it." On Earth's surface, people who had been watching the sky saw nothing. The battle, if it could be called that, happened on frequencies beyond human vision. But every space telescope, every military radar, every sensor system recorded the same thing. The Draconian fleet had simply vanished, exactly like the first one. General Yang stood in the command center, watching the data streams. His face showed no emotion, but inside he felt sick. Two massive armadas, millions of Draconian soldiers, all pulled into a dimension where suffering seemed to have no end. Earth was safe, but at a terrible cost to those who had threatened it. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," he ordered. "Tell them what happened, the exact truth this time." "Sir, are you sure?" Colonel Minho asked. "The government wanted us to maintain secrecy about the fold." "The time for secrets is over, Colonel. The galaxy needs to understand what protects Earth, because I suspect this will not be the last time someone tests us, and they need to understand that we do not control it. This is not a weapon we can turn off. It is a force of nature, and we are just as afraid of it as everyone else should be. Across the galaxy, the live broadcasts from the Draconian fleet suddenly cut to static. Billions of viewers stared at blank screens in confusion. Slowly, reports began filtering in from observers near Earth's solar system. The fleet had vanished, not destroyed in battle, not retreating, but simply gone as if it had never existed. The mockery stopped. The jokes fell silent. In its place came something cold and terrifying: fear. If Earth could make two massive armadas disappear without firing a single shot, what else could they do? And more importantly, how? Ambassador De received urgent communications from dozens of species, all asking the same questions. She prepared her response carefully, knowing that the next words she spoke would define Earth's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. She appeared on every major network, her image broadcast to thousands of worlds. She looked tired but determined. People of the galaxy, I must now tell you the truth about Earth. We are not as primitive as you believed, but we are also not as powerful as you now fear. What protects Earth is not a weapon. It is an anomaly in space-time that we call the Fold. We did not create it. We cannot control it. It simply exists around our world, and it reacts automatically to hostile intent. She paused, letting that sink in. The two Draconian Armadas are not destroyed. They are trapped in a pocket dimension that overlaps our reality. Our scientists detect their signals. They are alive, but we cannot retrieve them. We do not know how, and we did not want this to happen. We warned them, but they came anyway. Another pause. So I issue this warning one final time to the entire galaxy. Do not approach Earth with weapons. Do not come to conquer or harm us, but if you come in peace, you are welcome. We wish to join the galactic community as equals, not as conquerors or conquered. The choice is yours. Broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, leaders met in emergency sessions. Militaries revised their strategic plans. Scientists began theoretical studies of pocket dimensions and space-time anomalies. And slowly, carefully, the galaxy began to accept that this small blue planet, once considered primitive and defenseless, was perhaps the most dangerous place in known space. Not because of weapons or soldiers, but because of something far stranger that even humanity did not fully understand. 3 weeks after the Second Armada disappeared, the Galactic Council issued an ultimatum to Earth. They demanded a full explanation of the Fold phenomenon, access to Earth's research data, and permission to send a scientific team to study the anomaly. If Earth refused, the Council would consider them a threat to galactic security and act accordingly. Ambassador De sat in her small apartment on the Council station, reading the ultimatum for the 5th time. Her hands were shaking. The message was clear even through the diplomatic language. Cooperate or face the combined military might of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. 5 major species had already formed a coalition fleet. It sat at the edge of Earth's solar system, waiting for orders. She contacted Earth's government immediately. The holographic conference included General Yang, Director Sung, Admiral, and several other officials she did not recognize. Their faces were grim. They are threatening war, De said without preamble. The Council believes we are hiding a weapon of mass destruction. They will not accept our explanation that the Fold is natural and uncontrollable. Then we must show them the truth, Sung replied. No more half measures. We invite a small delegation to Earth and reveal everything. If they still do not believe us after seeing it with their own eyes, then at least we tried. Are you certain? Yang asked. Once we show them the facility, we cannot take that knowledge back. They will know our greatest secret. They already know something exists, pointed out. Right now they imagine we have some super weapon. The reality is almost worse, but at least it is the truth. And perhaps if they understand that we have no control over the Fold, they will stop viewing us as a threat. The decision was made. De sent the invitation within the hour. A delegation of 12 representatives from the most influential species would visit Earth. They would be unarmed, limited to scientific equipment only, and their visit would be broadcast live to the entire galaxy. Transparency was Earth's only weapon now. 2 weeks later, the delegation's ship entered Earth's atmosphere. Captain Wu had been assigned as their escort. She piloted a small shuttle alongside the alien vessel, guiding it to a landing site in the mountains of the Korean peninsula. The location had been chosen carefully, remote enough for security but close enough to the main facility where the truth waited. Wu watched the aliens emerge from their ship. She had seen images of different species before, but experiencing them in person was different. Counselor Arya, with 3 eyes and skin that shifted colors. A scientist whose exoskeleton clicked as it moved. A floating gas being from Nebula Collective. And 9 others, each stranger than the last. "Welcome to Earth," she said through a translation device. "I will take you to the facility now." The delegation traveled in armored vehicles through mountain roads. None of them spoke much. They were scientists and diplomats, trained to observe before making judgments, but Wu could sense their nervousness. They were on a planet that had made 2 armadas disappear without apparent effort. For all they knew, Earth could make them vanish just as easily. The facility entrance looked ordinary, just a door set into the mountain rock, guarded by a few soldiers. But when they went inside, the aliens began to understand this was something extraordinary. The corridor descended deep into the earth, lit by lights that seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm. The air itself felt wrong, charged with energy that made their sensors flicker and fail. Dr. Jin waited for them in the observation room. She had spent days preparing her presentation, consulting with Dr. One and dozens of other scientists. She looked tired but composed as the delegation filed into the room. "Thank you for coming," Jin began. "What I am about to show you will challenge everything you think you know about physics and reality. Please hold your questions until after the demonstration." She led them to a viewing window. On the other side was a large chamber containing the device that Wu had first seen months ago. It still hurt to look at directly, bending light in impossible ways. "This is not a weapon," Jin explained. "It is a quantum resonance device we built in 2157 during experiments into dimensional physics. We were trying to develop faster-than-light communication. Instead, we accidentally discovered something that had always existed around Earth, something we call the fold." She activated the holographic displays. Complex equations and sensor readings filled the air around them. "Our planet exists in a unique position in space-time. There is a thin barrier between our reality and a pocket dimension that overlaps Earth's orbital space. This barrier is normally stable and invisible, but when our experiments created specific quantum frequencies, we weakened that barrier temporarily." One of the alien scientists, a crystalline being, spoke up. "You created a dimensional breach. That should have destroyed your planet." "It would have, except the fold already existed," one said, stepping forward. The physicist had joined them to handle technical questions. "We did not create it. We just became aware of it, and we discovered something else. The fold responds to hostile intent." She pulled up new data. When the first Draconian Armada approached Earth with plans to invade, the fold reacted automatically. It is like an immune system. When it detects a threat to Earth, it pulls that threat into the pocket dimension. We have no control over this process. It simply happens. The crystalline scientist studied the data carefully. "This is impossible. Dimensions do not have intelligence. They do not respond to thoughts or intentions." "And yet it happens," Jin replied. "We have documented it twice now. Both times the fold activated when hostile forces approached. It did not activate when peaceful ships visited our orbit. The only common factor is intent." "Show us proof," demanded Arya. "Show us that the Draconian Armadas are truly in this fold dimension." General Yang stepped forward for the first time. The old soldier looked uncomfortable but determined. "Very well, but I warn you, what you are about to hear is disturbing." He activated a different set of equipment. Speakers crackled to life, and a sound filled the room. It was faint at first, barely audible over the background noise. Then one filtered out the static, and the sound became clear. Screaming, voices crying out in fear and pain. Thousands of voices overlapping, speaking in Draconian language, begging for help that would never come. "These are quantum transmissions detected from the fold," Yang explained, his voice heavy. "They have been continuous for months. The Draconian soldiers are alive in there, but we cannot reach them. We have tried. Every attempt to open a controlled breach into the fold has failed." The alien delegation stood in shocked silence. One of them, an insect-like being from the hive worlds, made a gesture that translated to horror. "This is worse than death. They are trapped in a dimension where normal physics do not apply. Time, space, causality, all of it broken." "Yes," Jin said quietly. "We believe the fold exists outside normal time. Minutes here might be years there, or vice versa. The Draconians have been trapped for 3 months from our perspective. For them, it could have been centuries." "And you cannot stop this?" Arya asked. "You cannot turn off this defense?" "No," Yang replied. "It is automatic. We have no control. And that is why we issued our warning. We do not want this to happen to anyone, but we cannot prevent it if someone approaches our world with hostile intentions." The delegation asked for permission to conduct their own scans of the facility. For hours, they examined every sensor reading, every equation, every piece of evidence. Some remained skeptical, but most began to accept the impossible truth. Earth was not protected by a weapon. It was protected by a tear in reality itself, a wound in space-time that responded to threats like a living thing. As the investigation continued, Captain Wu took Counselor Arya aside. The alien diplomat had been quiet for the last hour, clearly troubled by what they had learned. "You do not believe us," Wu said. "It was not a question." Arya's 3 eyes focused on her. "I believe you are telling the truth as you understand it, but there are parts of this that make no sense. Dimensions do not have awareness. They cannot judge intent. Something else is happening here, something even you do not fully understand." "Does it matter? The result is the same. Attack Earth and you disappear." "Yes, but understanding why matters greatly. Because if the fold is truly automatic and uncontrollable, then Earth is not a threat. But if something is controlling the fold, using it as a weapon, then we have a very different situation." Wu had not considered this possibility. The thought sent chills down her spine. What if the fold was not just a natural anomaly? What if something lived in there, something that had claimed Earth as its territory? The delegation's visit ended after 3 days. They had collected enough data to fill 1,000 research papers. More importantly, they had seen the facility, heard the screams from the fold, and witnessed Earth's scientists struggling to understand something that all known laws of physics. Maria made a statement before departing. "The Galactic Council will receive our report. We will recommend that Earth be granted protected status and given time to study this phenomenon. But we will also recommend that a joint research effort be established. This fold affects the entire galaxy now. If it continues to grow or change, it could threaten other systems." After the delegation left, Director Sung called an emergency meeting. She had troubling news that had been kept from the aliens. "The fold is expanding," she announced. "Our sensors show the dimensional barrier weakening. It is growing at approximately 0.3 light-years per month. If it continues at this rate, it will reach the nearest inhabited star system within 2 years." The room erupted in concerned voices. Admiral raised his hand for silence. "Do we know why it is expanding?" "We have theories," Dr. One replied. "The most likely explanation is that the fold fed on the energy and biomass from the 2 Draconian Armadas. That influx of matter and energy has made it stronger. It is like a fire that grows larger when you add fuel." "Are you saying we fed this thing?" Lieutenant Bora asked in horror. By defending ourselves, we made the problem worse. Possibly, we are still analyzing the data. But yes, it appears that every time the fold consumes a hostile force, it grows stronger and expands its reach. The implications were staggering. Earth was safe for now, but at the cost of creating a growing threat to the entire galaxy. The very thing that protected them might eventually doom billions of other beings on distant worlds. "We need to find a way to stop the expansion," Yang said. "Or better yet, find a way to close the fold entirely, before it is too late." "That will require resources we do not have," Sung pointed out. "We need the galaxy's help. We need to share everything we know and hope they can contribute technology and knowledge we lack." It was agreed. Earth would open its research completely, inviting scientists from across the galaxy to study the fold. It was a risk, but a necessary one, because if they could not solve this problem soon, the thing that had saved Earth might become the thing that destroyed everything else. As the meeting adjourned, Captain Wu stood at a window looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there, 5 species had gathered a coalition fleet, waiting to see if Earth was friend or foe. And somewhere beyond normal space, in a dimension where suffering never ended, millions of Draconian soldiers screamed for mercy that would never come. She wondered which fate was worse, being destroyed in battle or being saved by something that trapped your enemies in eternal torment. Earth had been given a terrible gift, and now they had to figure out how to live with the consequences. 3 months after the galactic delegation visited Earth, something impossible happened. Ships began appearing in Earth's orbit, but these were not new invaders. They were Draconian vessels, the same ones that had vanished into the fold, except they were wrong in ways that made human and alien observers alike feel sick with dread. Admiral stood in the command center, staring at the images from orbital telescopes. The Draconian warships looked like they had been turned inside out and then put back together by something that did not understand how ships should work. Metal fused with what appeared to be organic tissue. Weapons systems twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. And they were moving with purpose, hunting through Earth's orbital space. "They are not responding to any communication," Colonel Minho reported, his voice shaking. "No radio, no quantum signals, nothing. They just move from satellite to satellite, investigating each one." "Are the crew alive?" asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors detect organic matter inside the ships, but the readings do not make sense. They do not match any known life form, not even Draconian." Commander In flew his patrol craft near one of the changed vessels, maintaining a careful distance. Through his cockpit window, he could see movement inside the alien ship through gaps in the distorted hull. Shadows that moved in ways that violated basic biology. Appendages that appeared and disappeared like they existed in multiple places at once. "This is Commander into Earth Defense," he transmitted. "I am observing one of the returned vessels at close range. Whatever is piloting these ships, it is not the original crew, or if it is, they have been changed into something else entirely." As if responding to his words, the Draconian ship suddenly turned toward him. In felt his blood run cold. The vessel accelerated impossibly fast, crossing the distance between them in seconds. His fingers flew over the controls, preparing for evasive maneuvers. Then the ship stopped, hovering just meters away from his cockpit. Through the twisted hull, In saw something that would haunt his nightmares forever. Faces pressed against the distorted metal from inside. Draconian faces, but stretched and like one being had been split into many copies. Their eyes were still aware, still intelligent, and they were looking at him with desperate hunger. The ship pulled away as suddenly as it had approached. In sat in his cockpit, breathing heavily, trying to process what he had just seen. The Draconians were still in there, still aware, but they had become something else. Something that existed partially in the fold and partially in normal space. On Earth's surface, Dr. Jin worked frantically in her laboratory. The returned ships were leaking energy signatures that matched the fold. More importantly, they were trying to communicate, not through normal methods but through quantum entanglement directly into human brains. She had detected the signals hours ago and had been attempting to decode them ever since. Dr. One rushed into the lab, her face pale. "We have a bigger problem. The fold is not just expanding anymore. It is bleeding through. Those ships are just the beginning. We are detecting more objects starting to cross over from the pocket dimension." "What kind of objects?" Jin asked. "We do not know. Our sensors show massive readings appearing at random points around Earth. Whatever is in the fold is trying to come through to our reality." Across the galaxy, the news spread panic. The fold was no longer just Earth's problem. It was becoming an active threat to normal space. The coalition fleet at the edge of Earth's solar system received new orders. "Do not approach Earth, but prepare to contain anything that emerges from the planet's vicinity." Ambassador Du received hundreds of urgent messages from terrified species. "What have you done?" they demanded. "You said the fold was a defense. Now it is releasing nightmares into our universe." She had no good answers. Earth's scientists were as confused and frightened as everyone else. The fold was behaving in ways they had never predicted. It was like a wound that was now infected, leaking poison into healthy tissue. Lieutenant Bora made a discovery in the classified archives that changed everything. She had been searching through old research files when she found records from the original quantum experiments in 2157. What she read made her run to Director Sunk's office. "The fold was not an accident," Bora said, laying out the files. "Look at this. The scientists in 2157 detected something on the other side of the dimensional barrier before they breached it, something alive. They thought it was a background radiation anomaly, but it was not. It was a signal. Something was trying to communicate." Sung read the files with growing horror. They knew there was something in there, and they opened the breach anyway. They thought it was just an echo, a reflection of their own experiments. They did not realize they were opening a door to something that was already there, already aware, and now that something is trying to come through. The truth began to piece itself together. The fold was not empty. It had never been empty. It was inhabited by entities that existed outside normal space-time. When Earth's experiments weakened the dimensional barrier, these entities became aware of normal reality. And when the Draconian Armadas crossed over, the entities consumed them, learned from them, and now wanted more. General Yang assembled an emergency meeting with Earth's government and representatives from the Galactic Council. The holographic conference included dozens of species, all demanding answers and solutions. "We need to close the fold," Yang stated bluntly. "Every day it remains open, it grows stronger and more dangerous, but closing it will require cooperation from the entire galaxy. We need resources, technology, and knowledge that Earth does not possess." "Why should we help you?" demanded a representative from the militant species. "You created this problem. Your experiments opened this wound in reality. Let Earth deal with the consequences." Ambassador Du spoke up, her voice carrying across the conference. "Because the fold does not care about borders or species. It is expanding toward your territories too. In 2 years, maybe less, it will reach inhabited systems. And when it does, this will become everyone's problem. We can either work together now, or we can all face extinction separately." The argument continued for hours. Some species wanted to quarantine Earth, to seal off the entire solar system, and let whatever was emerging from the fold consume the planet. Others argued for military action, to destroy Earth before the fold grew large enough to threaten the galaxy. But a few, the and most far-sighted, understood that cooperation was the only option. Counselor Maria brokered a compromise. "We form a joint research team. Earth shares everything they know about the fold. We contribute our best scientists, our most advanced technology, and our combined resources. Together, we attempt to close the dimensional breach. If we fail, then we discuss more extreme options. The proposal was accepted. Within days, scientists from 40 different species arrived in Earth's solar system. They established research stations, shared data, and began the impossible task of understanding and revering something that should never have existed. Dr. One led the physics team. She coordinated with alien scientists whose understanding of dimensional mechanics far exceeded Earth's knowledge. Together, they made a disturbing discovery. The fold could not be closed by force. Any attempt to seal it with energy or technology would only make it rupture further. "It is like an infected wound," explained a crystalline scientist named Ara. "If you sew it shut while infection remains, the pressure builds until it explodes. We must first deal with what is inside the fold." "You mean the entities," Captain Wu said. She had been assigned as military liaison to the research team. "Yes, they are keeping the breach open. Their presence creates a pressure differential between dimensions. As long as they push against the barrier, it will continue to weaken and expand." "Can we communicate with them?" asked Young, the human analyst who specialized in alien psychology. "Maybe they want something. Maybe we can negotiate." The idea was controversial, but no one had better options. They needed to understand what the entities wanted, and there was only one way to do that. Someone had to go into the fold and make contact. Captain Wu volunteered immediately. "I have seen what the fold does. I have watched 2 armadas disappear into it. If anyone goes, it should be someone who understands the stakes." 4 alien volunteers joined her. Maria insisted on being one of them. "This crisis threatens all of us. If Earth's human can risk her life, so can a council representative." The team prepared for weeks. They were equipped with experimental technology designed to maintain their connection to normal reality while crossing into the fold. Theoretically, the equipment would prevent them from being consumed like the Draconian Armadas had been. Theoretically. The day of the mission arrived. Wu stood with her team at the breach point, a location in orbit where the dimensional barrier was thinnest. The entire galaxy watched through live broadcasts. Billions of beings held their breath as the 5 volunteers activated their equipment and stepped into empty space. Reality twisted around them. Wu felt her body stretch and compress simultaneously. Colors that should not exist flooded her vision. Sounds that had no source echoed in her mind. Then, suddenly, they were through. The fold was not what anyone expected. It was not darkness or chaos. It was a place of impossible geometry where directions had no meaning and time flowed in all directions at once. And it was crowded. The Draconian soldiers were there, changed and transformed but still aware. Millions of them, trapped in a space that was somehow both infinitely large and claustrophobically small. But more disturbing were the other inhabitants, the entities. They were not creatures in any normal sense. They were more like living concepts, thoughts given form and awareness. They gathered around the human and alien team, curious and hungry. Wu tried to speak, but sound did not work normally here. Instead, she thought her message as clearly as she could, hoping the entities would understand. "We did not mean to invade your home. The breach was an accident. We want to fix it. We want to restore the barrier between our dimensions." The entities responded, not with words but with images and emotions poured directly into her mind. Wu understood with terrible clarity. The entities were refugees. Their own dimension had been invaded by something worse than themselves, something that consumed entire realities. They had fled to this pocket dimension, this thin space between worlds, looking for safety. But then Earth's experiments had weakened the barrier. And worse, the Draconian Armadas had crossed over, bringing violence and aggression with them. The entities had consumed the Draconians not out of malice, but out of desperate self-defense. And now they were trapped, unable to return to their dying home dimension, unable to safely enter normal reality. "They are afraid," Wu transmitted back to the research team. They are not predators, they are refugees, and something is hunting them. The revelation changed everything. The Fold was not a threat to the galaxy. It was a sanctuary for beings fleeing from an even greater threat, and by opening the breach, humanity had accidentally given them a lifeline to normal space. The negotiations that followed took 3 weeks of subjective time, though only hours passed in normal reality. Time worked differently in the Fold, and Wu used that to her advantage. She and her team worked with the entities, with the transformed Draconian survivors, and with the research teams back in normal space to find a solution. The answer was unexpected but elegant. The entities did not want to invade normal space. They wanted to stabilize the Fold, to turn it from a temporary refuge into a permanent safe zone. But they needed help from beings who existed in normal reality. They needed cooperation. Dr. One led the technical effort. Working from Wu's descriptions and the entity's guidance, her team developed a new kind of dimensional stabilizer. It would reinforce the Fold's boundaries, prevent its expansion, and create a controlled interface between dimensions. The entities could remain in their sanctuary, and normal space would be protected. But there was a cost. The Draconian soldiers could not be fully returned. They had become too integrated with the Fold's dimensional structure. The best that could be done was to stabilize their forms, to ease their suffering, and give them the choice to remain in the Fold or to exist partially in normal space. 3% of the original Draconian Armadas chose to return, transformed but alive. They emerged from the Fold as hybrid beings, existing partially in both dimensions. Their testimony confirmed everything Wu had discovered. The entities were not monsters. They were survivors, and they had defended themselves the only way they knew how. The Draconian Empire, humiliated by the loss of 2 armadas but relieved to have survivors, agreed to a peace treaty with Earth. More importantly, they agreed to help maintain the dimensional stabilizers, to ensure that their soldiers who remained in the Fold would be cared for. 6 months after the crisis began, the stabilization was complete. The Fold stopped expanding. The entities, now calling themselves the Folded, established a peaceful coexistence with the species of normal space. They even proved useful, offering insights into dimensional physics that advanced galactic science by centuries. Earth's warning was updated one final time. The Fold is not a weapon. It is a refuge for beings fleeing a threat we do not yet understand. Approach with hostile intent, and the Folded will defend their sanctuary. But approach with respect and peaceful purpose, and you will find unexpected allies. The galaxy learned its hardest lesson. Humanity had not triumphed through superior weapons or ancient technology. They had won by doing what they did best. They talked to the monsters. They found common ground with beings that existed outside reality. They turned a cosmic horror story into a diplomatic solution. And somewhere in the depths of space beyond the Fold, something ancient and terrible noticed that its prey had found protection. It would come eventually, seeking to finish what it started. But when it did, it would find not just Earth, but an alliance of beings from 2 dimensions, ready to defend each other. The terror had emerged, yes, but it had also found something it did not expect: hope, friendship, and the stubborn human belief that even the impossible could be solved if you just tried hard enough to understand it first.